Welcome to Ronald the Rules Lawyer's ranting series, where I respond to the latest hot topics on Reddit and elsewhere. This video is a short one, hopefully, which is kind of an aside in my series dealing with casters in Pathfinder 2e. There is what I'm calling the caster kerfuffle right now in the Pathfinder 2e community, long simmering discontent perceiving that casters are weak in Pathfinder 2e, now bubbling to the surface in response to the Pathfinder Remaster's apparent nerfing of casters. Now, I speak on that subject in the video attached, where I think that is an overreaction. But I am building up towards a video that's actually going to culminate with what I'm calling the How to Caster Good video. It's a video I've been planning as part of my law school series as the last video of that series, but due to recent events, I need to move it up. Available right now to people who support my Patreon was maybe my favorite chat with people about Pathfinder 2e ever, in which I talk to people in my server who are tactically minded and talk about their advice to players who want to make their casters feel effective in this system. Today's hot topic is about the removal of the 8 traditional spell schools in Dungeons & Dragons. In my last video, I went over this design choice and relied a lot on Mark Seifter, one of the co-designers of Pathfinder 2e. The TLDW is that problems are created for the design space to have every school belong to one of 8 traditions that one class can be a specialist in. The quotes on screen are what I refer to, but I would add to that point too that in a system that tries to make all of the classes have their own strengths, having classes in the tradition of Dungeons & Dragons that have access to an entire spell list, that the power of that versatility somewhat precludes generalist casters being very good at being single target damage dealers. Now, the Kineticist is coming out, the new class with Rage of Elements, which shows what can happen in the design when you're not shackled by having to be a generalist. They're able to focus a design to do certain things particularly well. Things that look like spells, in fact. I think that removing schools could lead to a true, more unique necromancer class, possibly. And also, what has been a pain point for Pathfinder 2e casters, maybe we'd get an actual summoner that isn't simply somebody who has a magical friend. That's all speculation, however. Today, I'm going to look specifically at the claim that is being said right now that replacing the 8 current schools with specialized curriculums of magic is a nerf to spellcasters and makes the game less enjoyable, which I don't think it does. So the current controversy is about how, instead of the School of Enchantment giving access to about 160 spells in the system, we now have a much smaller spell list for what's called the School of Mentalism, which has about 20 spells. First, it needs to be said again that given Paizo's decision to be very safe and cover all their bases and not open themselves to litigation from Wizards of the Coast, they want to separate from this very peculiar idea that all spells belong to 8 schools of magic, which doesn't really exist anywhere else in fantasy fiction. I don't know if anyone has caught on to this mistake that I made yet, but I realized that this is more akin to being the School of Illusion and not the School of Enchantment. Because when you look at these spells, they actually are either from the current Enchantment School or the Illusion School. It's actually a mixture of the two. What's on the left are the names of the spells we see above. I make an attempt in the middle column of what spells that they are converting. And then, given those guesses, on the right are the magical schools that they're from. But yes, we see that they come from both the Enchantment School and the Illusion School. It's pretty clear why they belong together, given the description that we're given of the school. That students are taught the arts of befuddling lesser minds with figments and illusions, or implanted sensations and memories. This is basically a broad category that is about affecting people mentally, with the purpose of tricking or stymieing them. This feels natural to me for the concept of this school not to be shackled by the idea that a spell must belong to one of 8 schools and none of the others. Here are the 8 schools listed in Pathfinder 2e, and it is my opinion that these schools suck. they manage to be both too broad and too narrow. For example, color spray. There's nothing in the text saying that this is an illusion. You manifest something that perhaps is so bright that it blinds them. So maybe that energy is evocation. Maybe you conjured something into being and therefore it should be conjuration. Maybe you're affecting their minds and therefore it should be enchantment. But no, it is in the illusion box. And if someone were a specialist in enchantment right now, they would not be able to make color spray one of their specialist slot spells. And if you decide to specialize today in illusions, why would you not be able to have Dream Message be one of your specialist spells? This implants a message in one creature's dreams. You do, after all, have the Nightmare spell as one of your spells under the Illusion School, which affects people's dreams, but not Dream Message. It is kind of arbitrary. There are just many spells in the tradition of D&D and Pathfinder that don't fit neatly into any one of these 8 boxes. Healing spells are a big offender. In 2nd edition, Cure Light Wounds was a necromancy spell. In 3rd edition, it no longer became associated with life and death and became a conjuration spell, I assume to conjure tissue. Then in D&D 5th edition, it's now an evocation spell. And in Pathfinder 2e, we now come full circle, and it once again becomes a necromancy spell. And all along, one could make a fair argument that actually no, healing should be a transmutation spell because you're modifying someone's body. To prepare for this video, I just started from the top of the first rank spell list, starting with A, and found Air Bubble, which arguably could be conjuration for creating air around you, or it could be abjuration for creating a barrier against a vacuum or water that would otherwise prevent you from breathing. Let's look at the alarm spell, which basically creates a burglar alarm. Whenever a creature enters the spell's area, it alerts your party. So what school of magic is this? Well, it senses creatures, maybe it's divination, but it actually creates a mental alert, possibly. So maybe that's enchantment. Or it could be an audible alarm. Maybe that's illusion or conjuration of some kind. Well, actually, it is of the abjuration school, which riffs off of the idea that it protects you. However, the diviner specialist wizard who wanted to never be surprised and might want this spell will be disappointed to see that it's not a divination spell. Sure, it has the purpose of protecting and warding, but the description of the school from the core rulebook says it creates barriers and that it creates effects that harm trespassers or banish interlopers. The alarm spell does none of these things. What helped me rethink spell schools was this post in the Pathfinder 2e subreddit, which I'll link to in the video description, which basically makes the point that there are types of magic that don't neatly fall into any of the 8 schools. They talk about healing, they also mention telekinesis, but in this person's case, their idea of their wizard was someone who manipulates time. In Pathfinder, all of the time manipulation spells appear to be under transmutation, which is a bit weird if you think about it. However, there's no other school of the 8 that we're limited to that really embraces time better, probably. However, if a player wants to be a time specialist who wants to cast haste and slow and time stop, they would need to choose the transmutation school, which saddles them with the focus spell at level 1, physical boost, which gives you a bonus to acrobatics, athletics, fortitude, or reflex. Why? Not because you're a time wizard, but because you had to choose the transmutation school, and that school is primarily the school of changing bodies. And under the current system, we cannot have more than the 8 current schools. One could maybe homebrew and talk to your GM about having a curated school list, but in the context of how large these spell lists are, they are about 160 spells in the case of enchantment, it feels a bit like cheating, that you're trying to get the benefit of being a specialist and the bonus spell slot and the focus spell that you're getting while still retaining the flexibility of being a universalist who doesn't have to worry about spell schools because you're making your own spell school anyway. So from all this talk, you're probably guessing at what I'm trying to get at, which is that, surprisingly, abandoning a magic system where every spell must belong to one of 8 schools, wizards now get more flexibility to have a school that has spells from the current 8 schools. It can come from multiple ones, so long as you have a unifying theme. So let's take the School of Enchantment and see the actual effect on players who have that kind of concept of an enchanter for their caster, and who likely would be choosing the School of Mentalism now. Here are the current 12 rank 1 spells that come from the Enchantment School. The Remaster makes clear that your GM might allow you to swap or add other spells to your curriculum if they strongly fit the theme. And the theme of the School of Mentalism that we're being shown is the art of befuddling lesser minds with figments and illusions or implanted sensations and memories. With that in mind, when we look at this list of spells, almost every spell strongly fits that category. I only crossed off 3. Meanwhile, what spells outside the Enchantment School also strongly fit the School of Mentalism's focus? Well, pretty much, every spell in the Illusion School from rank 1. I also have in bold the spells that are listed in our preview PDF, the default spells that you can have for the School of Mentalism. And one of them arguably doesn't fit very neatly at all, Sure Strike. That's a huge amount of potential spells you can choose from as being part of your School of Mentalism. Not everybody who attends the same school comes out knowing the exact same things. Yes, you are limited to a smaller number. Yes, you are limited to only 3 spells as opposed to the 12 that you would currently have under the current system. But you did choose this theme of befuddling lesser minds, so I'm going to safely guess that the spells that are in the school you've chosen, or possibly worked with your GM to craft, are spells you like and that you plan to prepare every day. It is a specialist slot after all. Otherwise, specialists, quote unquote, would be asking for a 4th pseudo-universal slot that they would have that universalist casters would not have, while also getting an arcane school focus spell. And honestly, I think this could lead to a lot of creativity and fun at the table. Now we can have the School of Celebrity Survival, a school where up-and-coming entertainers get to learn the essential magical skills needed in order to form their initial fan base. Spells such as Infectious Enthusiasm, Instant Parade, and Roaring Applause. And once they become very famous and have the paparazzi going after them, they can make quick getaways, create illusory scenes, mislead, project image, disappear. This was actually a lot of fun creating this spell list, and behold, only some of them belong to the Enchantment School. All of the other ones that are not orange here are from the Illusion School, with the exception of Bilocation. What that spell does, let's say you have 2 competing television interviews that you need to show up for. Well, Bilocation is a conjuration spell currently that lets you be in 2 places at the same time, and you can at will end your existence in one of those 2 forms and permanently be with the other form. It's a great opportunity to make sure you get excellent service at a restaurant, or that people give you the respect you deserve. Otherwise, you're going to apparat out and you're just going to leave. But this fun exercise I went through would just not be possible under the current system. Plus, I was able to help shape the world by proposing this to my theoretical GM, that there is, if not a School of Celebrity Survival, maybe a major that I took in the Mentalist College. I've seen some anxiety expressed online that asking the GM to accommodate players' wishes by allowing for them to add or swap spells in is bad rules design, because you're asking the GMs to fix something. Kind of reminiscent of how D&D 5e creates holes in the rules and demands of the DM to balance the game while running it. First, I haven't seen those individuals acknowledge the reasons, the compelling reasons, I think, for removing the 8 schools. That aside, I don't think it's that difficult. The guidance is pretty clear. This is what the school is. You can kind of see what fits, what doesn't. And even if there's difference of opinion between two GMs, that doesn't really lead to any imbalance. One GM might say, oh, fear will not fit under the school of mentalism, while another one says, have at it, pick anything from the old enchantment school. In both instances, the player's power is about the same. They have a bonus slot that's limited to 3, maybe 4 spells, and caster number 1 could still use any of their universal slots to prepare fear. The only thing to watch out for in accommodating players' wishes for custom schools is the rarity tags, which you already should be concerned about. Some things like mind reading might have an unwanted effect on your campaign. One last note. Some people online have mentioned missing the ability of Schools of Magic to give you something that the Detect Magic cantrip will tell you. Now, the new Detect Magic will simply, instead of telling you the School of Magic, will tell you what rank or level the most powerful magical effect has. I'm going to miss that as well, and I hope that there is going to be some spell provided for us in the remaster that will clearly give players the ability to ascertain the nature of something. However, we already do have skills for that, using Arcana, for example, to understand the nature of a magical phenomenon, so it's not like GMs are flailing about here. And I guess we just have to be more creative in the meantime in giving evocative descriptions, thinking of what the character would ascertain instead of simply telling them, oh, that's an evocation effect. And after all, when players currently are being told a magical trap has an evocation aura, was that really useful information to begin with? Sure, many evocation effects do area damage on your party, and maybe your party will use that knowledge to prepare themselves for a fireball or a cone of cold coming out of that magical trap. But then your party would currently be surprised by the fact that darkness is an evocation effect, and maybe this magical trap will create heightened darkness around you so that monsters with greater dark vision can ambush the party. In the end, the 8 schools are a crude shorthand. They're akin to alignment currently in Pathfinder 2e. They require things be in mutually exclusive boxes when the reality is not more gray but more interesting. One of the early remaster panels from PaizoCon talked about a wizard school of civil engineering, which some people thought was boring. Who wants to be the wizard of engineering? And I thought it was kind of cool because there's a lot of practical things that fall under that school that are not limited by the 8 current schools. And it also places that college within the world. The idea that these arcane schools are tied in with how this fantasy society functions. And we can always make up our own fun schools like the School of Pyromancy or the School of Corpse Manipulation. Fantasy is by nature diverse and is a function of our imaginations. And very few fantasy fictional universes, maybe none outside of D&D, use 8 magical schools. Lord of the Rings didn't. Avatar: The Last Airbender didn't. Sure, systems of magic can be a way to define a world, but the current 8 schools of magic and the 9 alignments can kind of shackle creativity. Just as today, the gradual acceptance of non-Tolkien ancestries like orcs, goblins, leshies as playable characters make the old editions of D&D look old-fashioned, rigid, and a bit dull. I think that the 8 arcane schools that have been in the game for 50 years, 10 years from now will look kind of old, rigid, and dull. They'll look like yet another one of those old artifacts of D&D that doesn't keep pace with a hobby defined by the lack of limits and defined by imagination. So that's my rant for today. I will continue my series on casters. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, of course. Also, join my Discord community where people join up, discuss Pathfinder 2e, gaming, and also play the beginner box and participate in our drop-in organized play Pathfinder 2e campaign. And if you want access to exclusive videos, including the chat I had with people in my Discord, giving advice to players of casters, support my Patreon. You'll also get 7-day early access to most of my videos, and exclusive access to the 2 campaigns where I'm running Pathfinder 2e to D&D YouTubers who are trying it for the first time. So that's it. I have been Ronald the Rules Lawyer, and I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.